Hi guys, this is Vishal from Trapcode. So in this video, we will understand how to create a multi-step form with a link to a reference field. So what does it mean? So let's say we are onboarding an employee. Okay, so we are building an employee onboarding and we want to capture some detail of the employee. When then we want to capture maybe some educational detail, maybe some family details, and some other details, and those all of those details are stored in different collections. Okay, so now there's a parent collection which is employee, and there are a lot of child collection like has many team members, a lot of like address details, education details, previous employment details, and all those things. And obviously, you cannot store all this data in a single collection because there is a one to many or many to many relationship, right? So let's see how we build a form where there's a one parent collection and there are a lot of child collection or reference collections. Okay, so let's see how that can be done. So as of now, I don't have anything. So let's start from scratch. I'll create couple of collections and then we'll create the collection forms and then we will bind the events and complete the flow. Okay, so let's say we have a collection called employee. So I'll just keep the fields minimum. So let's say the employee has a name, which is one field, and let's say a email address. This is another field, and let's say a date, which is joining date. And it's a number of dependents, and it's a type number. Okay, that's all. So now this is one field. Now we want to capture the information of education, right? So we want to see what all education he had. Okay, so let's say I'll say education details, education detail. Now education, I'll just ask a couple of things. So let's say ask the university name, and I'll say probably the date of completion. Okay, and let's say static option, whether it was a part-time course or a sorry, I'll say course type, and it's a static option, and I'll say part-time, full-time. Okay, that's all. Now, as of now, there is no relationship between the course and the employee. So I'll just create a reference field. I'll say this particular record of the course belongs to some employee. Okay, so I'll say employee. We can also create a parent-child relationship. So in some case, we'll create parent-child relationship. In other case, we'll not create. So let's see. Okay, I'll say employee, which is a employee reference, and let's say link it to employee email address, which is fine. And I'll select multi-select because if you want employee to have multiple education. Okay, so create. So now this is done. So similarly, let's create family details. Okay, and this time I'll say maybe let's say family member name. Okay, let's say date of birth. And let's say one more field, which is a relation. What is the relation with this person? Okay, so we have this collection, and let's create one more collection, which is address. And let's say person will have only one address. So address is let's say locality name. Another text is city, maybe pin code or a zip code. So now this also needs to be linked to the person or the employee. So I'll put a reference. Now here let's make a parent-child relationship. I want the person should have a reference to his addresses, right? So let's go and create a field in person or in the employee. Sorry, I'll go to the configuration. I'll say add field. I'll say has a reference which is address. Okay, I'll say the collection which is address. Name, let's say just choose locality name. That's all. Okay, now I'll go back to the person and sorry, I go back to the address and refer it back. Okay, so here I'll go to the person and I'll say is a child of person, and it is asking that which particular field, child of employee, and this is the field that which particular field of that employee person is actually this address is referring to. Okay, and I'll say probably this is all optional. Okay, and that's all. So now we have created a employee. Okay, so we have these 4 collections. So there is an employee. An employee has many family members and many education details and an address. Okay, so this is an employee. So if you go to the configuration, employee has a name, email, joining date, number of dependents, address. So address is a reference field. So address is referencing to address collection. Okay, same thing here. So let's say multiple addresses. Same thing here. So he or she has many employee basically family members, and let's create one more field. So which is a reference of education. Okay, so they have many education, and I'll say education detail. Okay, and let's say just I'll say university name and multiple. Okay, that's all. So now this is a full flow or detail of an employee which has couple of fields, and there are a lot of dependent fields, right? Now basically the fields which are referencing to some data which is in some other collection through a parent-child relationship. Now let's say I want to create a employee profile and I want to capture all this information and link it to a employee, so that when we go to the employee details page or create a details page, we should be able to fetch everything with a one query. Let's see how that can be done. Okay, so first we'll build a onboarding process where we'll capture this information, then this, then this, and this. We build a multi-step form where the data is going in different collections, but all of them is referencing to the employee. Okay, so now let's go and create a page. So let's say this is the first page. Let's say step 1. Okay, I'll just keep it as blank. I'll put some header. Okay, some nav bar. It's onboarding. Let's build a 2-column layout like this. Okay, now the very first thing I want to capture is I want to capture the basic detail of an employee. Then we'll capture the family details, then we capture the education details, then we capture the address and so on. Okay, so I go to the component, drop a collection form, which is the employee. Now it has built a form. It has name, email, joining date, number of dependents. Addresses we don't need because all these we'll capture later. Okay, that's all. So, and just I'll put a header so that we know that on which page we are. Okay, let's say I'll say basic details. Now let's go and create an event to save this data. I'll go to events and create an event to save this data. So I'll say save employee data, create. So now what we want to do, we want to just save the information. Okay, so I'll say go to the collection, save data, and save an employee, which is fine. Success message, let's say success, failure messages, failure, and then that's all. Now I want to redirect it to the next page. So I'll say navigation page redirect. Then we need to create a step 2 page. So let's quickly create a step 2 and then we'll come back here. I'll go to the pages and add one more page. which is step 2. We'll configure this page later, but just create it so that we can bind it in the event. The page got created. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just reload this. I'll just say go to step 2. Now I want to send the current object ID to page. Okay, why current object? Because we are creating employee and we want that employee ID to be propagated to the next page. We will be needing it at several stages, so that's why we need it. I'll just say save. So this is here. Now let's go and build the second form. So I'll go here. Here I'll just put the same name bar. Okay. After that, we'll build another form. Now what we want to do, we want to display the data of the employee which was created, and then ask them to fill more information, because we are building a multi-step form. Okay, so I'll just drop a component, again a 2-column layout. That's all. Now this page already knows that the data of an employee is coming, so we'll need to bind the collection, because we want to display the data of employee, right? So we'll say bind the collection, which is employee. Okay, bring from collection, that's all. Why we are binding it? Because we want to display the name for and other fields which they have filled on the first place, plus whatever information is getting created here, we want to attach it to that employee. So we'll need the ID of that employee, and an ID of that employee means all the data of that employee, and so that we bind the collection. Okay, so I'll go here and just put a heading which is let's say education details. Okay, and let's say I want to display some information of the employee. Okay, so I'll just let's drop a card and just display some basic information. Okay, so this is here. Let's say I want to display the name of the employee. Okay, so I'll just say get text from employee and just display the name. Okay, so name is here, and let's display the email. So this is something which we are displaying from the logged in, basically the employee which has completed the onboarding. Now let's create a form to add the family members. Okay, so this was education. So let's create a form to create the education. So I'll drop a collection form and I'll say education details. Okay, we have not created an event. We'll create an event and we'll come back here. Okay, and let's say I also want to display the education which he is adding somewhere on the page, so that we know that what all has been added. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll drop one more component which is, let's say, 1-column layout, and let's display the information which they are adding. So I'll just display the data table. Okay, and here let's display the data from employee. Okay, now you already know who the employee is. We already have a parent-child relationship, so we can directly access these fields, right? So why we are getting these fields? Because the employee reference object already has a reference to address, to family members, and to education details. So I'll say education details. This is fine. Okay, we don't need search bar, so I'll just remove it. We don't need edit, delete functionality. We'll just remove it. Okay, so whatever data will get added from here will immediately get reflected here. Okay, so this gives the capability to display all the data, because all the other collection references which are there in different collections are linked to the employee. Okay, so now let's go and create an event. So I'll go to my events. I'll add one more event. Save education details. This is it. Now what we'll say? We'll say just save the data and reload the page. That's all. Okay, so I'll go to collection. I'll just save data, which will go into education detail. Okay, success, error, that's all. And then I'll just say reload the page. Okay, so now let's just see these two things working, then we'll continue the remaining journey. So I'll come back to my page and just bind this event. Let's just bind the event which we just created, which is save education detail. Okay, and one more thing which we'll have to do, we don't want this employee drop down the person should be entering, because we already know who the person is. Then it should only provide these three details. This should go as a hidden field, which will also cover in just like in a few minutes. I'll just click preview. Okay, so I'll just click preview, and let's complete the first step and the second step. So let's say the employee name is let's say Vishal, email is vishal@rapcode.com, joining date is some date. Okay, number of dependent, let's say 2, and I'll click submit. Now as soon as I click submit, it should save the data and take me to the next page where the person or the employee should be able to fill the family details. I'll say save. Shown me the success message and directed me to the page where I can see the data which I filled, because we have this ID coming. Right, now I want to add this education detail. As of now I have not added any education detail, so it is not, nothing is coming here. Now I don't want to choose employee like this, right, because we have created it as a drop down, so it is coming as a drop down. But I don't want to create a drop down. I want this to be automatically getting captured, because person may choose something else, right? Obviously this is not a right approach. So what I'll do, I'll go back to my form and they just mark this particular field as a hidden field, and we'll say whatever the ID is coming from the last form, or whoever is the employee who was there in the last form, take this value from there. Okay, and we'll see how do we do it. So here employee, so I'll just keep the key which is the employee, and I'll just delete this because this is not needed. What I'll do, I'll go to the components and look for the input field. Here I'll give the name, the employee which I just copied. Now I'll want to give the value. I'll say get value from employee, that whoever is the employee which is started onboarding, take the value from that employee. In which field? Basically the ID. Okay, the ID of that employee, because this is a reference field which we want to pass to that person. Okay, so now if I go here, instead of this drop down, I should see this ID, because this is the person who is completing the onboarding process. And if you go and see in the collection, there should be an employee and no education details. So if I go to collection, so there's an employee which got created. Okay, but if you see education, it's nothing. Okay, let's come here. So now you see this ID is coming, and we can obviously mark it as hidden, so that when person is filling the form, he will not see it. So I can just go and mark it as hidden. Now I have marked it as hidden, so you can see that we are not able to see it. Now let's add the data. So I'll say university 1, some date, some course, let's say part-time, and submit it. As of now, if you see, there is no education detail. Okay, and there is only one employee, and everything is blank. Okay, now one education detail got created, so let's go and see. So there is one education detail, and here it is it. Now let's add one more education detail. Let's say education 2, university 2, some date, some course, and submit. So here now you see the another detail also got added. So now this way you are adding a data to a collection which is referencing to some other collection. So there is an employee, there are education details, there are family members. Data is getting added to these collection, but it is still getting reference to the main employee. And if you fetch the details or the data of employee, you will be able to access this education information, family information, and all the data is stored in different collections, and all those are getting linked through a reference field. Okay, so similarly, let's build one more form. Let's say I want to capture the family details also. So I'll say add page. Let's say family details. I don't want to copy the form again, so I'll just copy, basically build from scratch. So I'll just copy from my existing form. So the data is here. I'll just remove this table and bind the, again I will bind the employee collection, because this data is also coming from employee, right? So here I'll say family details. Okay, here now I'll drop a data table and display the data of family members which are getting added. Okay, so I'll say get data from employee, and here I'll say family members. Okay, we don't need this thing, we don't need pagination, we don't need edit flow, we don't need this action. This is fine. Now this form I'll just change to family member add form. So I'll go to the collection and say collection form, which is now a family. Event we have not created, so let's go and just create an event. So I'll go back again and let's say save family details. I'll say go to collection, save the data in family success, failure. That's all. After that, what I'll say, just reload the page. Okay, so this is fine. Let's go back and add this to the family details form. Save family details. So it will also do the same. So now I want to create a button that once the person has added the education detail, they should be able to proceed to the next step, right? Which is obviously important. The only thing you need to make sure that when you are going any step and you still want to add the data to employee, you need to propagate this ID everywhere, right? So either you can just create a normal link. Okay, but the issue with the link is that you will not be able to get past this ID. So for that, we'll just create a collection form. Okay, and we'll see how we bind a navigate event. So I'll go and I'll create a collection form for step 2. Okay, so that when it goes to step 3, the ID should go there. And this is the one of the most important step. So I'll go here, I'll go to the component, I'll drop a collection form. Okay, let's say employee, because obviously we are sending the data of employee, and we'll remove all these fields. We don't need any of these fields. We just need the submit button. That's all what we need. Okay, because we're not sending anything. We're just saying go to the next page, but take the ID. Okay, so now let's go and create an event for this form. So I'll go to the event and create an event. So I'll say move from education details to family details. That's all. Okay, now here we'll do two things. We'll say first update the data. Okay, so let's say there are scenarios when you want to even store the step, that on which step they are, so you can just pass something hidden field that they have completed the first step, now they are moving to second step, third step, and all those. So this way it is much useful to know that okay, in what step the people are, right? So you can send some hidden field. We are not send anything here, so I'll just keep it as blank. Okay, and let's say just say success. After that, we'll say once we have saved that information, we want to redirect to the next page. So I'll say redirect, which is navigation page redirect. Now the next page is family details page. Now instead of sending the current page ID, we don't want to send the current page ID. We want to send the previous page collection ID. Why we are doing it? Whatever is coming from the previous step. So on step 1, it was a blank form employee. Step 2, we added the education detail, but the ID of the employee is coming. Now we want to propagate the same ID to the family details page. So we'll say that whatever the ID which is coming from the previous page, just send it as it is. So that's all. Send previous step parent collection ID. Here the parent collection is employee, right? So I'll say save, and that's all. Now let's go and bind this event. So this is the most important step where you are propagating the ID which is coming from previous form to the next form. You are not sending the ID of the data which is getting created on this particular form. So I'll say step 2. So now I'll go to the collection form and bind this event, which is move from education details to family details. That's all. And let's change the name of this button to, let's say, proceed to next steps. And I'll just make it probably center aligned. Okay, maybe change the class to okay, that's all. So now let's reload this page. So now I can either keep adding more education details. So let's see, University 3, some data, some course, keep adding. You can also do it through a model pop-up, keep displaying the data and propagate to the or move to the next step. So if you move to the next step, you will have to submit this form or basically click this link. I'll say proceed to next step. Here you see the ID is 61, starting with 61A and ending with 7F6. It should also move along to the next page. So I'll say proceed. Now if you see, this ID is getting propagated. It is coming from the previous step and it is moving to the next step. So this is something which is needed. Okay, so let's say family member A, date of birth is some date of birth. I think we have not marked it as a date field. So it is coming like this. Son. Okay, now again, same thing. We don't want to give employee. You can mark it as hidden field like we did in the previous step and then just submit. Okay, so the data is getting added. Okay, you will be able to, so let's go and see the family member collection. So a detail get added and you see the employee is Vishal. Okay, so now this is also attached to the employee which is coming from the hidden field, right? And the data is here. So now if you need to move to one other step, you just create one more button here, a form, which will just in the redirect, it will take the ID from the previous step and move to the next step. So here, in case of normal form submit, basically whatever the objects get created, the ID gets propagated from that form. But here, the ID is basically getting picked from the previous form. So that's the difference. So that if you are creating a multi-step process, every time you just keep on passing the same ID so that everything gets keep attaching to the same parent object collection. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you again in the next video. Bye bye.